Ashton. Hi. This is not your folder. This is your folder. I can tell because your folder is really heavy compared to the other folders. Why? Because you practice more than everybody else. What does that mean? It means, I don't know. It means that, how do I say this nicely? It means that you're going to be a better drummer than everybody else because you're putting in the time. That's what it means. So, good on you. Nice work. Hi, Lola. My dog's down here. Okay, so jazz brushes. I guess we'll start with that. Cool. I keep forgetting to put down a metronome marking for that, but it doesn't really matter. Ballpark, I know where you're at with that, so. So, hi-hat. You're saying you're having issues with your hi-hat, so you said you didn't go into too much detail, probably because you're not sure what's going on, but you said that the cymbal falls down or it collapses or something like that while you're playing. So that could be generally 3 possible issues. The most common, here we go. I could talk all day about a hi-hat stand. Look out. The most common would be that your hi-hat clutch, this wing bolt here, wing screw, I suppose, is just not tight enough. So it's slipping on the rod. And hopefully you can see that in the video, but I'll bring this over. So this is your hi-hat clutch, right? This thing that holds the top cymbal. Your wing screw, this guy, this clamps to the rod, right? That points up, sticks up. This has to be pretty tight, especially on like cheaper hi-hat clutches, generally speaking. But pretty much all hi-hat clutches, like, just tighten the heck out of it onto that rod when you adjust it. If you're at all sort of gentle with it, or it's not super tight, it's gonna slip. So that would be the first thing I'd look at. And while I'm here, another thing you can look at is this bottom nut. Maybe this is not tight enough, and that's coming loose while you're playing, and it's actually falling off. So if I loosen that, right, sorry, it's tough to get this on video with the right lighting. So if I just unscrew it all the way, lefty-loosey, it comes off, right? And then your cymbal just falls out of the clutch, and the whole thing just falls apart, right? So make sure that you screw this nut on righty-tighty, like as tight as you can get it, like really get it on there tight. And of course you still want some wobble in your top cymbal like we talked about the other week. That's usually controlled with these nuts on the top. So you get the bottom nut as tight as you can get it. Usually there's a stopping point, but on cheaper hi-hat clutches, there might not be a stopping point. Like you could literally screw this thing forever and it just keeps getting tighter and tighter on the cymbal, which in that case, I don't know, you should probably get a new hi-hat clutch because they're kind of useless. But you control the amount of wobble with these top nuts. So basically, most decent hi-hat clutches have 2 smaller nuts on the top, and you loosen them. Let's see if I can get this here. So you would loosen Sorry, the lighting's not that great. You would loosen the top one, see, like I'm doing right now. And then you would, so I'm trying to create more wobble in this cymbal. It was actually a little bit tight. So I loosen up, I'm moving the top nut up a little bit. And then I move the bottom up nut up a little bit. And then I lock them together. So I screw them into each other so that they don't move. That's the idea, okay? And let my dog out. She always seems to need to go out or come in during our drum lesson. I don't know why that is. Okay, so those are the two most not most common things, but those are two things to check on if the thing's falling apart while you're playing. The other one, I'll take the cymbal off completely. The other thing to check for would be, I guess I'll just bring this over as well. So, this is the rod, right? This is like the top post. So all hi-hat stands will have a top post that fits into a clamp in the middle of the stand like this. And if this wing screw here is not tight and the top post is slipping down while you're playing because this isn't tight enough, that could also cause issues. Okay, make sense? So those are the three things to look out for. And it's not necessarily your hi-hat stand's fault, because all hi-hat stands, you know, they have these issues. And you just have to learn how much things need to be tightened, and if it falls apart, like you just know why it fell apart while you're playing, and it is like the most annoying thing. So back when I lived in New York, a lot of the gigs that I did, you're playing a house kit, backline kit. In other words, you don't bring your own drums to the gig. Like, there's drums there, and a lot of gigs in New York are like that. And I never really liked that because I like playing my own drums, but that's just the deal a lot of times. And usually the drums are just beat up because no one takes care of them, and they just get played by every drummer every day of the week for years, and they don't get maintained and stuff like that. So one of the first things to go or get messed up or have missing parts is the hi-hat clutch. So I always carried an extra hi-hat clutch with me at all times, because I'd say 90% of the time the hi-hat clutch on house drums was not functional. Sometimes there wouldn't even be a hi-hat clutch. So it's important. If that's falling apart while you're playing, it's like game over. Cool. Back to our jazz brushes. So, yes, I like them being a little bit flatter. I thought that sounded better. There certainly is a time to have a little bit more angle and be more on the tip of the brush, and you'll have to make that decision based on the music. I know it seems subtle, but it's, you know, great drummers are aware of these subtleties, and they make decisions based on these subtleties and based on the music, and that's why they sound great. Average drummers that don't sound very good, they don't even know about these details, and they don't pay attention to them. So it's important. It looks and sounds really good. You're super close. I think a couple things. One, the obvious that I say every week, less bass drum. The hi-hat, despite your issues with it, was so much better, and it really makes that groove feel and sound right now that you brought up your left foot volume. So really nice there. So that's awesome. the main thing you gotta consider and work on is that your left hand stirring is not super consistent right now. You watch the video you sent me, you'll see that your circles, sometimes they're smaller, pretty circular circles. Other times they're like longer oval shapes. You change where you're stirring those circles on the drum head. You know, sometimes you might be over here, and then sometimes you're kind of over here, you know, so you're kind of moving around. That changes your sound and makes it not so consistent. And then the hardest thing that you're going to have to deal with is that the speed of your circles in your left hand is inconsistent. And it's because it's a coordination issue. Like, you are getting that cross, which is helping you stay pretty much in time right now, the cross on 2 and 4. But in between those crosses on 2 and 4, the speed of your left hand stirring changes a little bit. I can't demonstrate this because I just wouldn't be able to do it. But if you watch the video, I think you can see and hear what I'm talking about. So the solution there, like, you're just going to have to slow it way down and make sure that your left hand, everything I just mentioned, is cleaned up. So, you know. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So my left hand brush is like here-ish every time I have that cross on 2 and 4. It's also there-ish every time I'm on 1 and 3 over here, right? So I think that's probably where you're getting messed up, is your 1s and 3s, your left-hand position is not in the same place as where your 2s and 4s are. So something funky is happening in there with the speed of your left hand. So yeah, you're just going to have to go crazy slow and realize that it's not quite right and just sort it out. Cool. But other than that, it's even despite the left-hand consistencies, it sounded really good. It sounded way better than it did a couple weeks ago. So, and it looks pretty right. You know, it looks like you're fairly comfortable with it now. So, cool. Just sort out those things. Notes. Rudiments. Okay. One thing I've mentioned is that I notice you're doing sort of a French grip kind of thing with these for whatever reason. French grip is when you have your sticks or brushes kind of closer together and sort of parallel to each other, and your thumbs are on top. They're facing up, so it's this kind of position. It's more of a finger-oriented kind of position. You can't get the power that you can from playing American grip, or German grip, which is like even further apart. We call them grips, but in a way, it's not really the grip. It's kind of more the angle that you have between sticks or brushes. So French is like kind of parallel in like this, which is sort of what you were doing this week. American is pie-shaped, and German would be like extremely pie-shaped. Elbows are kind of out like that. I think the American's the best, and it's the most versatile and just makes the most sense. I don't play French grip. The only time I use sort of a French grip is when I'm on the ride cymbal and I have my thumb up, and I'm pretty much always in French grip with just my right hand. That's true with every drummer, but the rest of the time I'm basically, you know, cymbals, I might occasionally, it might be sort of Frenchy, but drums and like, anyways, I just thought I'd mention it because you might not have known that you were doing it, and you're more than welcome to do it, but know that if you're going to use two different grips, two different positions is a better word for it, you probably should be practicing a lot of the things that you practice, like double the amount with two different grips. Yeah, which is double the work, double the time. Certainly with like snare drum rudiment technical kind of stuff like this, the rudiment kind of stuff. Like if you really want to be able to play French grip and American grip, you should probably be doing all the rudiments all the time, both ways. So if you're up for that, you're more than welcome to. An advantage of French grip is it does utilize the fingers a little bit more. And once you get used to it and know the grip, you can play things like super fast and very precisely. Not necessarily loud, but, you know, medium to lower volume. You can play really fast and really precise once you learn the grip and gain control of the fingers. I've noticed that. Coming from a guy who's never worked on French grip, and I don't plan to ever, because playing super fast isn't important to me. But that's an advantage of that. So, cool. All right, so that was worth mentioning. And overall, your sound with brushes, it sounds really good. I think you've reached a point where you're starting to get comfortable with these, right? Only took a couple months, right? They're hard, but I can see and hear when you play with them that there's a comfort level there. And so that's awesome. What else do I have to say about rudiments? We need the accents in the paradiddles to pop out, and the unaccented in the paradiddles to not pop out. So this is especially hard when they're in triplet format, right? Those accents fall in weird places, you know? Hear that? So my accents are very prominent and all the other notes are lower in volume. So shoot for that. I was noticing you were getting in a little bit of an accent in those places that feel comfortable to you, like on beat 1 with the right hand. But once the accents fall on a left hand in the middle of the measure and they get all weird, like you didn't put them in and all the notes were the same volume. So that's an important thing here. Not to say that we don't want to play paradiddles completely even sometimes, but for now, get the accents in there. It's hard. It makes it harder. And yeah, so check that out. Also, both times you went through the exercise, you didn't switch to 16th notes on the paradiddles. Everything else was fine. But you ended up playing 4 bars of paradiddle triplets and then another 4 bars of paradiddle triplets. So realize that you got to switch to 16ths there, right? You have 4 bars of 8th note paradiddles, 4 bars of triplet paradiddles, and then 4 bars of 16th note paradiddles, right? So you're switching from triplets. Thinking and playing at the same time. I'll play 4 bars of paradiddle triplets, and then I'll transition to paradiddle 16th notes. So even when I go to 16th notes, I still have that accent in there. And it would be in there if I was playing 8th notes. Right? Okay. Other than that, it was good. And you were super tight with the click, and everything was precise and even and stuff. So just do it again. Show me again this week. Straighten out that paradiddle stuff. Cool. Let's do shuffle spacing. I guess that's what we'll call it for now. Some people might call it phrasing. I'd probably call it spacing. Shuffle spacing. So we have our triplet, we have our tight, snappy, close together, and we have our wider, looser, further apart. And yeah, you're basically doing it. I just want you to stretch on those ones a little bit more. Obviously, the triplet one is like perfect, is totally comfortable because that's what you know at this point. That's what we've been working on for weeks. It's just your standard triplet shuffle. So you probably don't really like need to show me that because I know you understand what that is. Just make sure you keep understanding what that is. What you're gonna need to do is spend more time on the snappy version and on the wide spaced version. The snappier version could have been a little bit snappier. I think especially at this point, it's good to exaggerate that a little bit and make it ultra snappy so that you get used to that. And then also with the wide version, that could have been a little bit wider, a little bit more spaced apart. But you were in the ballpark. And of course, within those things, like, you and the music will determine kind of exactly where you want that to be based on the situation. So sometimes you want your snappy shuffle to be ultra snappy. Sometimes you want it to be just a little bit snappy, right? So you can move within that. But for now, it makes sense to just try to get things super snappy, super wide, and commit to that spacing. Get used to that. And then once you understand where that is on both ends of the spectrum, then you can start to mess with it a little bit. Okay. 105. So I'll just give you that stuff again. Triplet. Ultra snappy. Without the kick. Super tight, right? And then kind of an ultra wide version. It becomes more legato. There's a lot of space in there. Right? So understanding those two on a deep level, that's where you're at. Okay, cool. And then lastly, we had our shuffle with solo stuff. Okay, so okay. Solos. All your solos were 8 bars, not 12 bars. So within your solos, you were losing the form in your head. When you were playing just a shuffle, just the groove, you were keeping your 12-bar form, but all the solos you showed me were 8 bars. So you were losing the form from your head when you took those solos. So as I said before, the form is the most important thing. So I don't even like if you're losing the form, I don't even care what your solo is. I'm not interested. If you're keeping the form, then we can talk about your solo, right? So make sure that 12-bar blues, whatever you're singing, make sure that stays number 1, and that your solos are number 2. Okay. So you'll want to show me all that again without messing up the form. And then you could also think about dynamics within your solo. We haven't really talked a ton about dynamics yet. But especially with the limitation that we're working within, it's a very simple limitation, and it could seem like boring on the surface. But it's important that we're never bored with what we're playing, even if it's simple. That's number 1. And number 2, we can make that simple idea much more interesting if we throw in some dynamics. So in other words, soft, medium, loud, crescendos, decrescendos, getting louder, getting softer, accents, unaccented, that kind of thing. So that solo is working within the same simple limitation, but it was fairly interesting, right? Because I had different dynamics happening in there. Always keeping in mind the groove, the tempo, keeping things where they need to be feel-wise, even though I'm changing volumes. That's, another trick. It takes getting used to. But, so yeah, for this week, show it to me again. I definitely like seeing 4 or 5 solos, so I know it's a little bit, you gotta shoot a little bit longer video. I think we can stay at 105, that's fine. It's not fast, it's not crazy slow, it's a good tempo for now. And just keep the form, stay with that limitation, and include some dynamics in your solos to make it interesting. Okay. Okay, the stick twirling thing. So, I think it would be in your best interest to always make it about the music and not about yourself. Okay, so the stick twirling thing sort of becomes more about yourself and less about the music. And so when I watch the video, the takeaway that I get, and not just you, but any drummer that generally that twirls their sticks. I know a lot of people think it's cool, but it's kind of not. The takeaway I get from that every time I see it is that they're not really being respectful to the music. And in this case, you're sort of not being respectful to the space that you're putting in your solos. And when in actuality, it's the space that you're putting in your solos that make your solo interesting within that limitation. Because if I just said, just solo using shuffle the eighth notes with no space the whole time, your solo would be more boring. But because there's space in there, that creates contrast, black and white, opposites, sound, no sound. So by twirling your sticks every time you come to space, it's telling me that you don't care about the space. At least that's the takeaway I think that the audience gets from it. Okay, and along those lines, generally in the real world, if you find yourself playing with bands, playing with people, doing gigs, most of the time, the people that you're playing with are not gonna dig the fact that you're twirling your sticks. In fact, especially like lead singers, because they generally want the spotlight to be on them, and that's kind of just the way they are. I've never had a problem with that. I kind of like sitting in the back and just holding down the fort. I wouldn't want to be on the front of the stage getting all the attention. But, for the drummer that twirls their sticks and does things that like that, you're drawing attention to yourself, and most singers are going to have a problem with that. They don't want you to do that because they want to steal the show for themselves, and which is fine. Singers. But anyways, I can think of one drummer. I don't know who he was, but I was doing this the Waterfront Blues Festival in Portland, Oregon one time. I played on the main stage, which was really cool. It was in front of like 10, 20, 30,000 people, something like that. It was amazing. And one of the bands that played on that stage after us, their drummer was incredible. Really good drummer. But he twirled his sticks all the time. And to most of us musicians that were watching the band, we were kind of like, well, this drummer sounds great, but why does he have to put all that showmanship into it, I don't know. It's, I promised that I wouldn't take myself down the path of hammering into you why I don't like stick twirling, and apparently I failed at that because I'm still talking about it. I would say if it's something you're really interested in, then the best way to do it would be to have a really good stick twirl. I can't even do it. I've really never practiced it, so I'm not going to try to demonstrate it because I'm not a stick twirling kind of guy. But I can tell that your stick twirl is like it's average. It's not super fancy and clean and amazing and whatnot. I would say if it's something that really interests you, that you'd want to have just the most amazing stick twirl we've ever seen in our lives, and B, you would use it very sparingly, and you would find, that perfect moment to throw it in there. That would be a tasteful way of doing it. Okay, all right, I'll stop beating you up over that. I promised myself I wouldn't do it, and I totally did it. But make it about the music, not about you, okay? That's my best advice. All right, cool. I gotta wrap this up. That is it for today. Hope things are good. See you next time.